Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining me this evening to talk about breaking the bamboo, concrete, and mosaic ceilings. We are here to promote women of color in education leadership. My name is Dr. Mishkat Al Mumin. I am the brand ambassador for Quarantine Racism. If you'd like to continue the conversation, please connect with me on LinkedIn at Mishkat Al Mumin. You can also connect with me on YouTube at The Communication of Success, especially if there is a topic you'd like me to discuss in a video. I also have my Substack at Dr. Mishkat, and I explore education leadership among other topics on the platform. So, without further ado, why this conversation matter? When we understand the why and we spend a little bit of time to examine it rather than the how, which many leaders spend their time talking about, we will have a better conversation, a better understanding, and a more inclusive way forward. So for Asian American, fewer than 2% of K through 12 principals identify as Asian American or Pacific Islander, even though you have over 6% of public school enrollment as Asian American student or a Pacific Islander. For Hispanic educators, they do make up to 14.1% of school superintendents, despite being over 28% of K through 12 public schools and over 50% of many urban districts. For Black women, about 11% of superintendents are Black, with Black women particularly underrepresented. Although Black students make up more or about 15% of public school enrollment. I am sharing these numbers not to, just share them or just to put them out there, because I want us to use them to pave the way forward. As educators, we understand that students learn from people who look like them. It's very difficult to create relatability through activities, curricula, through programs when you have students coming from a particular culture and background, while the entire school system is presented through a different culture and a different background. I also want us to take a minute to examine the MENA women, Middle East and North Africa women. Oftentimes, through surveys, they are categorized as white or other, leaving them out of leadership representation. So, kind of unknown but invisible. I couldn't find some particular, or some stats related to their status in the education system here in the US, but I went a little bit abroad and found out that 7% of university presidents in the Arab world are women, with most leadership concentrated in a male dominated governing structure. Believe me, I understand this firsthand because I started my career in Iraq and I was one female faculty member. I was the only female faculty member at the law school at Baghdad University among 45. Can you believe that? And then my journey wasn't as smooth or welcoming as you can imagine. Oftentimes, I was giving classes no one wanted to teach. But I will be exploring that topic in detail in my upcoming book. It's called Unseen, Unbroken. So, more on that later. What are the ceilings? Let's explore them a little bit. The concrete ceiling for Black, Latina, Indigenous women, referenced by racism and sexism. For the bamboo ceiling, it's referencing Asian and Asian American women as well as Asian Pacific Islander women, reinforced by cultural stereotypes. For the mosaic ceiling, it's referencing Middle Eastern women, fragmented identity, uh, polarization, and erased, and oftentimes being framed as backward women, which is truly untrue about their identity. Being the first or the only, I shared a little bit about that with you earlier about my personal journey being the only female among 45 male professors at the law school in Baghdad University. And the journey started for when I joined the law school as a student, and there were fewer than 10 women in the class among 50 male students. Um, the first lecture I had at the law school wasn't to welcome me or to, you know, commend me for starting my university education. The first thing the professor said, "What are the women doing here? Why don't you go to the nursing school where you belong?" All the male colleagues laughed. That was reflected in how the curriculum was taught. Rape as a crime was often passed over. Harassment and sexual harassment was actually never taught. I still remember, standing up for my gender when I refused to be ridiculed when we were talking about divorce. At least some of the topics were discussed in the classroom. And one of my male colleagues, commented on a case study where the man took all the money and the woman was left with nothing. And he said, good for him. She deserved to be left penniless. And I raised my hand, and I was lucky enough to have an understanding professor at this class who allowed me to contribute further. And I literally asked my male colleague, would he had said the same had it been his sister, his cousin, his, you know, uh, uh, daughter? Would that be his comment? Why can't we reach an agreement, a settlement where the shared wealth will be distributed evenly? Furthermore, I have represented many women as an attorney, and oftentimes, despite Iraq being recognized for its progressive laws towards women, unfortunately, implementation was a totally different story. Even when I won the case at the court, the implementation to carry out the verdict was another story completely. My client, received a judgment in her favor to collect all of her furniture and money. When we went to collect, everything was destroyed, torn apart. She collected, a lot of trash, but not the value she deserved. So by the end of the day, to see all of that and experience all of that, that is a growth moment. However, it's a growth moment that is experienced through pain, through trauma, through hardship. And again, that's why I relate to all women of colors, all people of color, because I have seen their struggle. The cost of being the first is often heavy, to include higher scrutiny and less support. As I told you, I was given classes, no one wanted. I recall, the previous professor who taught the class couldn't even finish because, students at a university level were acting out and he couldn't control the class. Luckily enough, I used my knowledge and expertise and created a learning environment where growth would take place. And that's a chapter in my book as well. Here in the US, I experienced something similar because, I look different, I speak different. It's hard to, categorize me in a category that would fit 100%. The stereotype image of a Middle Eastern woman is the one with a veil. You see me talking to you without a veil. My skin color is fair, so it's hard to say I am a Black person, even though I connect and feel part of the Black community. You cannot say I'm white similarly because I don't act or behave as a white person. Um, what does that reveal? The biases and um, the way leadership norms are defined. There is implicit bias that takes place the minute a resume is read and the name is slightly different or unfamiliar. Further down, when you read through, places where that person worked or where they get their education from, the bias grows and grows and grows. Oftentimes, I have been told, and I've heard that so many times before, you must be twice as good um, to get half as far. To be honest with you, that didn't deter me personally. Currently, I'm pursuing my second doctoral degree. I have two master's degree. One of them is from Harvard. It did not deter me, but was the road easy? No. Was the situation tolerable? No. Did I feel like I fit or I belong? Definitely not. And there is a slide about that coming your way. I call it leadership from the margins. That was my experience in leadership. And I'll walk you through it a little bit. You have to balance visibility and safety. Even if you feel you can contribute more to the organization, deep down, if you contributed more, then you will become um, a bit of a target, you know, someone who needs to be pushed out. So, as you won't be stealing or taking away what belongs to others. So, for example, you have to think about when to speak, and if you want to speak boldly, pinpoint what's going on and what's, taking place, especially, when it comes to ethical issues, when it comes to best practices. being, you know, uh, put under the spotlights or erased, so to speak. And, you either feel like you're being uh, presented as a token for cultural differences. Like, as an organization, we embrace cultural differences. And here's an example. On the other hand, you are being asked to blend in or lose your identity, technically speak. Act like everyone else, even if that's not your culture, even if it's not your professional standard, even if it's raising an ethical issue. So all these get played in leading from the margins. There is what I'm going to call a global conflict that takes place or being transported, carried into local rooms. What do I mean by that? The assumption about politics, religion, loyalty. There was an organization, and it was an academic organization. The first day I was being introduced to staff members, and the first question a staffer asked me, "Are you Muslim?" That was the first question. Talking about religion, it's a personal matter. It's something relate to how you connect with higher powers, how you connect with God, or how you connect with your church, ministry, synagogue, your mosque. It depends a lot on how you connect with your spirituality. It's not something to be questioned about during your first day at work. Post 9/11 definitely has been challenging in terms of, um, you have to, uh, present yourself in such a way that, makes you not part of that horrible event. Um, Personally, I am from Iraq, and I was born in Lebanon, so I carry two ethnicity, even though, generally speaking, in the United States, the Middle East is being seen as one big region, everyone is the same. In reality, it's like saying Europe is a big continent and everyone is the same. But when you go there, Germany is different than UK, France is different than Norway, and so on and so forth. It's true about the Middle East. Countries are different, they have their own traditions. Even the dialect is different, even though they all understand the modern standard Arabic. So, similarly, in Europe, you could say that most Europeans understand English and can speak it. It doesn't mean that it's, their day to day language. And again, all the unrest in the Middle East, is the first question I got. You know, how did you survive? Where are you from? Which country? Which capital? And it often feels like an interrogation versus a conversation. Women of color, they lead the change. And I'll tell you why. Not because they want change for the sake of change, but because they can pinpoint where policies and systems are failing. They went through it and they can analyze it and pinpoint what is going on and how to fix it. These are just some examples that I personally admire. So, Dr. Gloria Ladson Billings, I personally admires how she transformed, you know, education through culturally relevant pedagogy. Again, you have to create, you know, a connection with your students, whether it's through the activities you present to them or through the curriculum you teach them. There must be a connection. To teach something abstract where it doesn't relate to anything within their communities, within their experiences, it's a recipe for disaster. And then we question why students would come unprepared, why they are failing tests, because the material is presented in such a way to discourage, uh, connectivity between students and the materials they are examining. The first Latina Illinois superintendent, advanced bilingual education and equity focused reform statewide, Dr. Carmen Ayala. Um, her contributions to bilingual education deserve to be acknowledged and appreciated. Laina Zitsu, she founded the first Chinese immersion public schools, overcoming the resistance through culturally rooted leadership and academic excellence. Dr. Rina Daijani from the Middle East, from Jordan, combined global scholarship with grassroots action to establish 4,000 plus community libraries for women and youth. Let's break these ceilings. They do exist, but it doesn't mean they have to stay. One way of doing it is to design, stretch, and support roles for women of color. We create, and we can definitely create, these interim or cross functional leadership opportunities that come with coaching, with authority, with visibility, not just extra workload. You see, so many times women of color are given extra workload on top of what they have without any support or mentorship. Then they are expected to succeed. The only way to succeed through the recipe of overwork, no support, is to battle through it all. And I have been there, I have battled through it all. But it takes a toll on your health, on your relationship, on your professional development, and peace of mind. And redesign promotion criteria and check for bias. There are some language that continues to exist through the hiring process. And I have sat on so many hiring committees. So and so doesn't fit. What does that tell you? So, what do you mean they don't fit? Is there a size they need to fit in, for example? Their presence is not sitting well with me. They are too confident or less confident. So, especially for virtual interviews, they are so confident, or they didn't make eye contact. They are less confident. These types of judgment, they lack true metrics. You are not measuring anything here. These are opinions. They don't present, a criteria that we can measure the qualifications of the candidate based on it. Um, Legacy building projects led by women of color. They need to be funded, they need to be invested in. Uh, and I don't want us to think of investment just only in terms of money. Resources can be presented in terms of training, in terms of education, professional development opportunities, all of the above. It's true. Oftentimes, you need funding. And on this note, I would like to share that the Communication of Success, the consultancy firm that I founded and currently leading, is happy to write any grant for any school or school district seeking professional development for women of color. Require equity centered succession planning. Tie executive evaluation to how well they mentor and position women of color to lead. It's very difficult to be handed a position and be asked to lead a team if you haven't been mentored, if you don't have the required tools to lead, if you don't have someone to look for in case you need some answers, you need some clarifications. Mentoring is key to success. And I'd like to say if mentoring does not exist, then research would be the second best bet. And I have done, a lot of research to build my leadership style and to lead organizations where, mentoring was not provided. Integrate healing justice into the leadership pipeline. Include racial trauma informed support. Um, Conduct community care practices or community circles. Boundary setting and training. Oftentimes, leadership of color get undermined because so many staffers would perceive them as different, would perceive them as less knowledgeable, and the undermining start to take place. So boundary setting training is really key here. Normalize co-leadership. So find a co-leader, a person of color who happen to be your second in command, and you know adhere to shared governance to normalize the process of having women of color in leadership. As I told you, oftentimes this concept of so and so does not fit comes from bias, comes from the perception that there is an image of the leader. If that image is not met, then that person is not a good fit. Co-leadership, when you lead together, when you present the person of color as the second in command and mentor them to later on become the sole or leader, that's really changing the culture of the organization from within, and promoting shared governance within the organization. I'm going to present you with several tools for you to consider using to transform your classroom. Not only because building a healthy racial relationship with your student is key to your success, but it's also leading by example. You are telling your student of color how they can become leaders and how should a leader behave. So I talked about mentoring and resources here at Quarantine Racism. We designed a course from teachers or you know by teachers for teachers. And the idea of the course is to empower the educator to create an inclusive environment, an inclusive learning environment, to build cultural competence within the class. The course is not for free. It is $294. That's for the standard course. The executive course, which is basically if someone wants to become the facilitator, they want to teach the course to other educators. The cost will be 494. If you cannot pay for the course, you can ask your administrator, your school administrator, to buy it for you. If that's not an option, again, you have another option, which is to reach out to the Communication of Success, and I'll help you write a grant to secure funding and buy the course. You can learn more about the course by visiting our website and exploring the opportunity further. There are free resources for you if you'd like. If you want to subscribe to my YouTube channel, just go to YouTube at the Communication of Success. I talk a lot about favoritism in the workplace, types of favoritism, and how to deal with each type. I provide out of the box solutions to help everyone succeed in their workplace, including educators and teachers. If you'd like a lengthy uh, exploration of the topic, you can connect with me on LinkedIn and explore my newsletter. Currently, I have 3,188 subscribers, and I post an article every Sunday. You can also connect with me on Substack. I provide more takeaways and reflections on that particular platform. Schools and systems should do. One thing that they need to focus on is to um, publish promotion and pay equity audits based on race and gender. Transparency is key. It's key to hold everyone accountable, and it's key to lead the change. If it's not measured, it's not changed. So that part needs to take place. Compensate identity based labor as strategic leadership. You need mentorship, you need recruitment, you need cultural work and competency, not as side tasks, but as institutional assets. So, training staff on cultural competency is key. And to be honest with you, I have worked in so many places. I have more than 20 years of experience in academia, federal government, nonprofit. I have rarely seen cultural competency as a training. And again, if that's something your school is invested in or is willing to look into, I'm happy to conduct the training for you. Replace pipelines with custom build pathways. There isn't a one size fits all, honestly. Each person brings their own expertise, and each organization has its own barriers that are, thrown in the face of women of color. Um, Even here in the US, I have not practiced as an attorney, but I have wide uh, connection with the legal community. So many prosecutors and even judges and attorneys, they, discussed with me the biases that they experience at work just because they are women of color. To include, for example, they are not being referred to by their title. So, especially, in a formal setting, in a courtroom, you can see, for example, the male attorney being referenced by their title, while the female of color is called on by her first name. Restorative justice and restorative leadership is really key to healing practices. I have been called on to bring peace and harmony to departments that were in turmoil. And key part of leadership is restorative justice, meaning you don't punish, you create a mechanism to mend what was broken. So healing does not come through punishment all the time. I understand there are situations where you have to take a corrective action or hold people accountable. That's absolutely acceptable. But before we get to that point, is there something that can be done? That's the question that needs an answer. What you can do today: leverage your wins to widen the path for others. And oftentimes, leaders tend to, limit access versus widening the path. The key is not to be the only leader out there. The key is to lead with others. That's more powerful and more impactful. Mentor with intention, not with just, to check the box. You have to uplift the talent. Oftentimes, I used to do an assessment, and I would sit with my mentees, whether, students, employees, co-workers, and I would give them their strength and what they can do with it to address areas needing improvement. And I would give them opportunities to shine, to lead a project, to, come up with something that is really meaningful to them and build it from the ground up. Use your voice when silence, protects the status quo. I still recall that I sat in, a hiring committee, and immediately one of the candidate was almost put in a box. And I spoke up. I said, do we have any evidence from what the candidate said to reflect that point of view? Did we ask them the question to get the right information from them? And the rest of the committee agreed with me, and the person was hired. So, asking the right questions, being proactive about things, and using your voice as a tool it's really very important to break the ceilings. Co-create systems. As I said earlier in the presentation, oftentimes we ignore the why and we jumped to the how. When you co-create, you explore the why, the how, the where, and it will come organically from within rather than being imposed from above. My closing message to every woman of color who would hear this presentation is to lead anyway. Ceilings may crack. You may be called to build a whole new structure. So lead anyway. My second message is don't try to fit into any mold. You are unique and amazing as you are. And whatever is going on, it's their problem, not yours. Lead anyway. I thank you for joining me this afternoon and or this evening, and I'm more than happy to take any questions you might have. If you think of a question later, please feel free to connect with me on LinkedIn. Again, my name is Mishkat Al-Mumin, and I'll be happy to learn more about your experience and how can we lead together. Thank you.